Hi, my name is Nnamdi COF, and my proposition is the legalization of human cloning will lead to mass social unrest. So, what comes to mind when you guys think of the word clone? Many of you may consider, the Twilight Zone, or perhaps like in modern standards, an episode of Black Mirror. What if I told you guys that cloning has been a practice technique that has been well available to us for over the last 20 years? And to this day, a variety of species have already been cloned successfully by scientists. So, you guys may ask, why not humans? This is because many people in the scientific community feel that the cloning of humans is highly unethical, but on the other end of the spectrum, many feel like it has great applications that can help benefit human society in like the reproductive fields. So people who may struggle to have their own children naturally or through natural means may be able to do so using cloning. But today I'm here to explain why that is not a good idea and why we should continue to ban human cloning for the following reasons. Before I get to the meat of my argument, I'd like to provide a definition. So in this case, cloning is the process of artificially creating an offspring genetically identical to its parent. The only time in nature that this would occur is with the case of identical twins. So it might be easier for you guys to conceptualize clones as twins that are born on a separate date rather than as like a legitimate copy. So my first reason that I don't think introducing clones into human society would be a good idea is that many would argue that one of the greatest reasons to have clones is that geniuses or athletes, artists, just great thinkers could be replicated and their DNA could be just recreated through generations, right? However, although this sounds like an interesting prospect, this would be an enormous amount of pressure on these clones to live up to the expectations of their parents. As an exact genetic match, clones would have to live with the stress of living in their parents' shadow for their entire lives. Clones would also have a much harder time being individuals, as finding their own identity would become difficult when their entire purpose would be to live up to some sort of legacy. Clones of successful people would be scrutinized by society and considered failures if they're not as successful as their parents. And this would create an unnecessary focus on genetics as like a chief factor in what would make somebody successful or not versus environment, which is in reality. And then the potential extra social burden could give clones anxiety or stress, or even force them to act out. And many would just disagree with like allowing someone to be created with such a high expectation in the first place. That would just be not right to them. And then I think like a scenario to help you understand this would be to consider like an athlete like LeBron James or Michael Jordan, and imagine that they invest in this cloning technology and they have a clone of their own. It would be very difficult for this clone to exist living in the scrutiny of their parent's shadow, as well as it would be difficult for them to invest into other fields or even invest themselves into other fields, because they have these expectations to be a spectacular athlete. So if they wanted to get into the arts or perhaps even be like a comm major, they probably couldn't because everybody's like, you're LeBron James Jr. Anyway, so a second reason for banning cloning would be that the cloning process is very unpracticed and wasteful. The vast majority of cloning attempts are wildly unsuccessful, and according to research facilities at UC Davis, only about 10% of cloning attempts are successful, and only 10% of the animals live to see their birth. The cloning process also involves the use of embryonic stem cells that are only found in the cells of embryos, and the rest of the embryo would be wasted. So this can cause extreme controversy, as many people would be against the use of embryos in the procedure, especially at a poor success rate. Many would feel that the embryos were potential human beings who were killed for no reason. This could also potentially build up animosity for the clones themselves, as they feel that as people would feel that they were created at such an expensive cost. And this would definitely result in social unrest, especially among people who are into pro-life debates. I think. Okay. And then my third reason is that clones are known to have a plethora of health complications. So even people are theoretically able to create clones. It seems like in labs that the animals that have been cloned are almost always born with health defects. Many of them are susceptible to suffering from diseases that they shouldn't suffer until way later in life. They're also known to have gigantic organs and other issues that they shouldn't be suffering from. I feel that many people find it very unethical to bring people into existence knowing this may be a factor in their life that they'll probably be sick. And to just test around with that wouldn't be fair to them. And my fourth reason is cloning would definitely conflict with what people believe about religion or societal values. So many religions emphasize the importance of nature and having natural balance and natural order to things. And proponents of such religions will take offense to the creation of clones as an artificial procedure. They may feel it's like playing God or just simply taking humanity's power beyond where it should be. And this will obviously cause conflicts with proponents of religion or anything. So in conclusion, although the idea of being able to clone humans may sound appealing, the act of actually doing so would be very controversial and would definitely lead to social unrest, as many people oppose such actions for the same reasons as I stated prior. I hope that you all agree that with the consequences in mind, that it would outweigh the benefits.
All right, well, you started off with a proposition which I thought was pretty effective at making this a claim of fact. Then later on, when you get to the main body of the speech, you kind of repeat a propositional statement, and it sounds like it's a claim of policy that we should continue the ban on human cloning. So stick with the original proposition, and I think it'll be a little bit clearer. There's no preview of what the main supporting points are going to be. There's a little bit of explanation about why people might want to be doing cloning at the beginning, so I thought that was a pretty good start. Helps establish a little bit of a controversy, but without the preview, I'm not exactly sure how important this is going to be at the beginning of the speech. On the individual points, you signpost them pretty clearly. That's fine. The first point is all speculative. It's all these hypothetical examples of what if Michael Jordan were to clone himself. I mean, that's the closest you come to having a specific piece of information there. There is a piece of data here that talks about the lack of success with cloning, that only 10% are successful. It sounds to me like you've got some other data that suggests that it's even less than that, because those that are successful apparently have problems with their organs being the wrong size or early development of disease, but there's no evidence on that. You basically assert that. I don't doubt that it's true, but you ought to be providing us with some citation to prove that information is true. Everything about the unrealistic expectations on the kids and the whole issue about the environment and that sort of thing, that's all hypothetical and speculative. It assumes that this kind of thing would happen, and then kind of plays out the consequences of that. It makes for an interesting science fiction film, but I'm not exactly sure that it makes for an effective issue of fact dispute. The issues of fact about whether or not cloning can be successful for humans, I think that's maybe a little bit more practical. The idea that there are potential drawbacks because of the number of embryonic stem cells that we'd have to use, the number of embryos that would be destroyed, the potential for problems in the clones themselves, issues that come with cost. I think those would be the kinds of things that you could quantify and provide some evidence for, and make a stronger, more practical argument suggesting that cloning is really problematic, rather than the speculative sorts of things where we're talking about Gattaca, basically that kind of stuff. All right, and then the conflict with religion that's brought up as a topic, but it feels a little bit like a throwaway because there's not really much development of it there. And like I said, there's no citation of evidence on those points. It's nicely presented. I think you do a pretty good job making your points with us and explaining things. I just think that there's a real lack of proof on some of those points because it is so speculative and tentative. All right, thank you.